In this video, we will review a particular kind of percent problem. It might be referred to as percent of change or percent of increase or decrease. So let's take a look at the steps that we want to use to solve a percent of change problem. The first step is to find the amount of change. You will find the amount that something changed by subtracting the old and the new amounts. You will ignore the sign. If you get a negative answer to that, you will just ignore it. In some cases, you might actually be given the amount of change, which we will have an example of that in the problems that we review, so you won't have to do the subtraction. But if you're given old and new amounts, you will want to subtract. Then you want to find the original or the old amount. That's the number that we're going to use in our formula. We're going to use a formula that follows in just a moment and use the cross multiplication process that is hopefully becoming familiar to you when we do percent problems. So the formula looks like this, and you'll notice that it doesn't look too much different than is over of equals percent over 100. In place of is, we put the amount of the change. That's why we want to calculate that, highlighted in blue here. The original or old amount in green, we will put that in the place of or the whole. The other side looks exactly the same. We have some percent over 100. So as I mentioned, this is not completely new. It's just a little bit of a twist on the same percent calculation. So here's 3 examples that will hopefully drive this home. First example, the price of a shirt increased $3 from the old price of $20. What is the percent increase? So here we are told that it increased by $3. We know the amount of increase. We could label that, abbreviating. The amount of increase is right here, and it's equal to 3. The old price, it's very clear here, was $20, and we know that we need that as well. What is the percent increase? So let's set this up. The amount of increase goes on top, the old amount goes on the bottom, and we set that equal to our unknown percent over 100. Now we cross multiply. As I've mentioned before, I always like to start cross multiplying with the part that involves x. 20 times x is equal to 3 times 100, which is 300. And then we, as a familiar last step, we divide by whatever x is being multiplied by. In this case, 20. That cancels the 20 out, and it leaves us with x is equal to 15. And we want to remember that this means 15%. And because the price of the shirt increased, this is a 15% increase. So just in review, this was our increase amount of increase on top. And this was our old amount on the bottom. All right, let's clear that off and look at problem 2. During a sale, the price of a taco decreased from $4 to $2.80. What is the percent decrease? Now, here we aren't given the amount of the decrease. We're given the old amount, $4, and the new amount, $2.80. So we have to subtract to find the amount of the increase. 4 minus 280. When you do this, it's generally a good idea to just subtract the smaller number from the larger number. We're not worried about the sign. If you were to get a negative number here, just ignore it. It changed by $1.20. It went down by $1.20. And we know that we're always going to use the old amount. So our proportion is going to look like $1.20 over $4. is equal to our percent over 100. A nice thing about these problems is that you're always missing the percent. So it's very consistent that way. Let's cross multiply. 4 times x is equal to $1.20, 1.20 times 100, which is 120. Do that with your calculator to prove that that's what it gives you. Finally, we divide both sides by 4. Cancels out the 4 here. And x is equal to 120 divided by 4, which is 30. And once again, we want to remember that that's 30%. And in this case, it is a decrease because the price went down. Okay, last problem. This problem demonstrates that we don't need nice round numbers to do this same kind of calculation. John's salary increased from $49,000 to $52,150. What is the percent increase? We have an old amount here. We have a new amount here. We don't know the amount of increase. So we have to do the subtraction. As I suggested, I will start with the larger number, subtract the smaller number, and we find out that our amount of increase was $3,150. That's what we needed in combination with the old amount. So it's going to be $3,150 over the old amount of $49,000. Notice in our proportion, we will never use the new amount directly. We used it to find the amount of change, but that's it. Okay, let's cross multiply. It's going to be 49,000 times x, and that's going to be equal to 3,150 times 100. Do that in your calculator to make sure that you don't make a mistake, and you should get $315,000. Now, finally, we're going to divide both sides by 49,000. Now, these are big numbers, but since you're using a calculator, it really doesn't matter. It's not any more difficult to calculate this than when we have nice round numbers. Those are going to cancel each other out. Now, the thing that happens in this case is that we end up with an answer that involves a decimal, but that's perfectly okay. That's what happens most of the time in the real world. I'm going to round that to 6.43. And remember that it's a percent, and it is an increase because John's salary went up. So we refer to that as an increase. All right, that's basically it for percent of change. Now it's time for some practice on your own.